was the house where the Immaculate Heart of Mary sisters were born at Ihiala on 7th October 1937. Behold the 2 seeds planted by Bishop Charles Hiri, the Vicar Apostolic of Onitsha Owerri, that germinated into the Religious Institute of the Most Pure Heart of Mary, later known as the Religious Institute of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, Mother of Christ. The seed watered and pruned by the Holy Rosary Sister Rosemary Choir. Here stands the 4-roomed block built for aspirants in 1939. With the opening of girls' primary school and a small dispensary at Ihiala, the apostolate of the Young Institute took off on a small scale. The 2 tender seeds devoted their time to prayer. In school, instruction sessions with their formators, dispensary and marriage center, and in the evening, they concentrated in preparing school assignment, catechism, and farming. With the profession of the pioneer members, the school apostolate was intensified since they were already teachers. The same was true of the home visitation, which was the main point of contact with people. Rural clinic was on daily basis. Education of women equals to education of our nation. This adage is true of the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, Mother of Christ. The Immaculate Heart Institute gave an look to the church in Nigeria and the entire country through their bold and courageous steps in salvaging the church's institutions and property at the deportation of our expatriates by the federal government after the Nigerian Civil War of 1967 to 1970. This institute cannot be properly understood without an understanding of her beginnings.
The first thing I can say is thanksgiving to God that 75 years ago, Archbishop Charles Hiri of blessed memory had the idea to found this religious family. 75 years is quite some time. We thank God for this. When we look back, whenever there's a jubilee, whether silver or gold or diamond or platinum, it is a milestone, a point at which to stop, to look back, to thank God. The Immaculate Heart Sisters congregation has many reasons for thanking God. Thank God for the many sisters He gave you from the days of Mother Bernadette, whom God called away about 30 years ago or 20, and Mother Magdalene, whom God kept with us beyond 100 years and only recently called to Himself. Between them and following them are very many sisters. God has blessed this religious family. You have sisters who are answering the call according to the original charisma of your congregation from the beginning. You have sisters who are teachers from kindergarten right up to the university. You have medical workers, nurses, doctors, laboratory workers, and other medical sisters. You have sister catechists who are in the parish situation and are helping people to get into the mysteries of Christ, understand as much as we can, and live these mysteries. You have parish assistants. You have sisters also who work with their hands. They make vestments. They teach girls how to run a home. You have sisters who work with their hands in the farm. One of your sisters was conducting me around her farm, and she was speaking like the queen of the whole area. And you have sisters who cook in such a way that when you eat, you like to eat again. You have sisters who give hope to women, because one of the original ideas of Archbishop Hiri was that you would be a hope to girls and to women in our society. You have responded to that in a big way. For all these and many other reasons I have not mentioned, it is important to thank God.
Go out to the whole world, proclaim the good news to all creation. The Church of Jesus Christ was established 2,000 years ago, and Christ instructed his followers to go out to the whole world and spread the gospel to all creation. This very good news was diffused into this part of the universe through a French Holy Ghost missionary, Father Lutz and his companions, in 1885. Now, for the good news to take root, the natives must be initiated into the lifestyle of the good news. The unfavorable situation of the women folk and the underprivileged posed a problem, especially in matters of health and medical care. Our compassionate and renowned Bishop, Most Reverend Dr. Charles Huri, CSSP, of the Vicariate of Onitsha, Owerri, Nigeria, made up his mind to address the needs of the women through rural and formal education. And so, through the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, he established the Institute of the Sisters of the Most Pure Heart of Mary. The seed was planted in 1937 with Mother Mary Benedict Maria Anyogu and Mother Magdalene Clara Oranu as the first aspirants. Their religious formation was entrusted to the able care of Sister Mary Rose Maguire, a Holy Rosary sister from Ireland. Their early formation, therefore, started at Ihiala. The beginning was very slow.
Holy Ghost sisters were really teachers to us. God's plan going and growing. When they were sowing the seed, we know what they were doing. They were good people. They were people of God. They know what they want, what they are doing. They try to inculcate in us the spirit of religion, which we don't even realize, including charity and humility, which we didn't realize at that time as young sisters.
The founding members, Mother Mary Benedict Anyogu and Mother Mary Magdalene Oranu, were great women. With them, Bishop Hiri started this young congregation, which started as if it was not going to be a reality, because after the first few years, after 1937, for about 4 or 5 years, nobody seemed to be trekking in. And Bishop Hiri was wondering, will this become a reality or not? However, in God's own time, girls picked up courage and joined the congregation, because it was a novelty at that time for any young girl to leave her maternal home and become a reverend sister. And the great challenge of reverend sister at that time was that they were not going to be wife to anybody, therefore they were not going to have children of their own. And no mother in Igbo land will accept that her daughter will not propagate or continue the social function of a woman, biological distinct, which is also to continue and propagate, to increase and multiply. It was an idea difficult for the Igbos to understand at that time, but girls of great courage really braved it. And with the help of Charles Siri and the Holy Rosary Sisters who trained us, they started. And in 1946, the first two were really professed. And then thereafter, the congregation continued to grow. He wrote a lot to them. And in his letters, you could read out a lot of what his spiritual insight and the legacy that he was leaving to his daughters.
The gradual but steady increase in the number of aspirants necessitated a new site for the novitiate of the Institute. Through the instrumentality of Father Michael Foley, CSSP, the then parish priest of St. Michael's Parish, Uruala, the father founder of the Young Institute, secured a land at Uruala, still in the same vicariate for the novitiate. 7 years after the foundation, the pioneer members became postulants. On the 6th day of January 1944, the 2 postulants were received as novices. Their reception mass was presided over by their founder at the Holy Trinity Cathedral, Onitsha, now known as the Basilica of the Most Holy Trinity. That same day, after the celebration, the entire institute, comprising of 2 novices, 4 postulants, and 6 aspirants, moved down to Uruala, their new novitiate, in the company of their 2 Holy Rosary formators, Mother Mary Eucharia Reynolds and Mother Delodes Buckley, appointed as their superior general and novice mistress, respectively. This is in fulfillment of their founder's letter earlier. I feel Ihiala is not the place. 5th October 1937.
1944. After precisely 7 years, the new members were received. So on 6th January, a memorable day, all the candidates traveled to the Holy Trinity Cathedral Onitsha for the reception of the 2 first candidates in the person of our beloved Mother Mary Benedict of blessed memory and Mother Mary Magdalene Orano. When they were together, the number increased to 12. So the competition was inadequate. It became evident that another formation house will be erected. In the course of time, the second formation house was erected at Uruala. So after the reception of the novices in 1944, on 6th January, feast of Epiphany of our Lord, the whole group moved to Uruala. Then I went to Ihiala again.
The Institute continued to advance in age and numbers, irrespective of the occasional unpleasant experiences of bitter oppositions of parents and relatives against their daughter's vocation. Consequently, aspirants were often dragged home forcefully, beaten and tortured mercilessly.
The parents could not understand. They could not understand this. They were talking about women are collected to come to Uruala. And these women are women, the ladies will not have husband. God forbid. Those of sisters who managed at that time to join them went into suffering. You'll be having a kind of recreation. 1, 2, you find a car or group of men. They come, carry a guy. They carry the guy outside, and not only carry, or remove what the guy was wearing, beat the guy, take the guy home. Many of them, I can tell you, if our sisters will remember, there are sisters called Sister Mary Anthony, she's dead now. But if they watch her, they find wounds. That's what the people did. They beat her like that. You find wounds. Then Sister Mary Martin Morrison, they beat her and nakeded her, removed everything from her, and so on. You see, the whole thing is that her father was a chief. She was the first daughter of that chief, and the mother. There are few other women. The mother had only one girl, that was the girl. And they couldn't understand all that kind of nonsense according to them. The Peter brought her to Newi, and then when they went to Newi, the father loved her, sent her back and said, those sisters at Newi, you must not allow her to move anywhere. This particular sister, before it is the day, she has walked away from that community down to Ruala, up to Mbise, where we call Umokrika, and nobody. When they came back again, they could not find her. They could not find her. Anthony and Modi, the parents came and took her and beat her and removed all the clothes she had and so on. But then she managed, she was wearing only a shimmy and so on, that is, we came. Many of them, like Sister Mary Clever from Rwanda, went to Rwanda, even though Rwanda people helped to get house built and all this. But when they saw what was happening, they came and collected Sister. Even the person talking to you now, the father wanted to kill, but he couldn't. Once we made up our mind and no matter what they did, all those girls who were bundled home came back in spite of the difficulty, came back, and the sisters were happy.
The 2 years of novitiate was not without its problems and inconveniences. Their veranda then was their only classroom, sewing room and laundry. The only available electricity was Ochanja and Mpanaka. Yet their selfless superiors and formators left no stone unturned in ensuring sound formation of the young institute. The foundational charism of the Immaculate Heart Sisters is the compassion of Christ. From personal experiences of the sisters who knew their founder, Archbishop Charles Hiri, and had the privilege of studies and reflections on the various facets of his life, work, and his letters, it was discovered that the gospel vision which spurred him on to found this religious institute was the compassion of Christ.
Now I want to talk a little bit more about what motivated Archbishop Charles Hiri in his educational program. This is the core part of his vision and his reason for embarking on education. That was the compassion of Christ. He was very much touched by compassion, and that is compassion towards the ignorant. And this is the legacy also benefited to his daughters. And that is the core charism of the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Compassion of Christ in whatever you are doing. This compassion is carried out in the spirit of merit. This also fleshes out in Hiri's compassion for women. You know, one of the things that touched him when he started his work here in Nigeria, especially in Igbo land, was the condition that women had to live and work for family. These women, the Igbo women, they were struggling in a very difficult situation to sustain their family. Economically, they were the people striving to sustain them. And he wanted to help them, to give them opportunity to carry along this family very well. That was why he had a special love, just like Christ, the underprivileged, the women of that time.
The founder displayed an overwhelming concern for the plight of the underprivileged, especially women and children, in his vicariate in the 1930s. Contemplating this mandate of the Lord, be compassionate. His aim, desire, and missionary activities centered on bringing this virtue of Christ to his flock in the spirit of humility, no matter their apostolic needs.
And started education. Remember, FIFA, the first teachers training college, the TC2, teachers training college, what we call Loreto Special Science School today at Ago. He was the one who started it. It actually started in Waterside Holy Rosary Maternity. That was where it started, as a small school. Before the lack of ground, it was then taken to Ihiala. From Ihiala, then to others where it settled finally. So it was the first teachers training college for women, meant to help women in order to give them a better condition, because he knew that women were the life of society. If you train a woman, you train a family, you train a nation. If a woman is spiritually sound, the family will be spiritually sound, and the nation will be spiritually sound. That's why the Sisters of Immaculate Heart of Mary have always had that a preferential option for women in their educational orientation, in their educational program. We do not neglect men, but that is the inkling, the step that our founder took, and we'll continue to take that, and we'll continue to do whatever we can to help in the development of women.
Hence, in the apostolic activities of the Immaculate Heart Sisters, they seek to cultivate and show a sympathetic personal love and concern to their patients and workers, and all they come in contact with. That selfless love, characteristic of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, who opens her heart to all.
Our father founder was very much interested in the sick, the less privileged, women and children, especially in the rural areas. Because during the time he came into Nigeria, this group of people were very much marginalized, especially the women. And he really had empathy on the women and the less privileged and wanted to do something for them in a way that the impact will be felt. And he felt that it's only the people from that area, especially the women, that will be able to help their own women. So he decided to found a congregation and took the Igbo girls to be the founding members of this congregation, and have been handing on this founders charism, which we call compassion, to each generation of the formation or group of sisters. And our founders desire to achieve this through medical help, working in medical institutions, helping the sick, helping the aged, the elderly, helping women to really find fulfillment in their life as women and fit in properly in the society. And that is our only two quota in this our founders' aspiration we are contributing. And we're trying to make sure that wherever our founder is, when he looks and sees the Igbo women, his daughters of the Immaculate Heart, that his aspiration and life and desire has continued to exist. And I'm sure he'll be smiling each time he looks down and sees us, just as we smile as we do the job and find fulfillment that we are participating in our founders' dreams and making it come true.
The dreams of Charles Hiri turned a reality on the 6th of January 1946, the profession day of the pioneer members, presided over by the founder in the Sisters' Chapel at Urual. Come, Bride of Christ, receive the crown prepared for you from all eternity, was echoed into the ears and hearts of the new brides. What a joy dedicating oneself to God's glory, one's sanctification and salvation of souls. With the two professed, already qualified teachers, the educational apostolate of the Young Institute was fanned into flame. The catechism classes for initiation into various sacraments were not relegated to the background. Even home visitation was on a regular basis as the principal means of contact with the indigenous.
Then coming to our work, our people in those days, they were not accepting twins in some places, like in Woodside. We took care of twins. I remember vividly one set of twins that we took from the time they were born, brought them up, sent them to school until they became adults and got married. The boy, his name was Joseph, and the girl, her name Teresa. We used to visit the poor people, and when they came to us, we listen to them and attend to them through our spirituals. We used to go on home visitation. Our purpose mainly was to see their people in their homes, chat with them. If they had any problems, to share with them, and the children used to enjoy to seeing us coming to their homes. And the elderly ones, we render them whatever help we could in their homes. The sick, at times we could even refer them to the hospital besides giving them any medication in their home. We used to teach catechism, preparing people for the reception of sacraments. And again on Sunday, we used to have catechism classes before benediction. We had clinics where our sisters work and take care of children mainly and the women, especially pregnant women and the sick ones. Occasionally the men could be attended to according to their needs.
In this manner, people were prepared for sacraments, enabled to practice their faith, and ensured solution to their problems. Another point of contact was the maternity and bush clinics, where women and children were cared for. Thus, from far and near, babies were brought to the sister midwife for Medicare.
These clinics were not only the ones that we are near the convent. Some of us go out to bush clinic that is outside the town where we are living.
Receive the habit of religion, and may the Lord clothe you in the habit of a new man. The same 6th January 1946 was another step forward in the Institute as 4 new postulants were received into the novitiate. Thus, the second set of the Institute came to existence. However, the mustard seed continued her gradual growth, and again, 1948 witnessed the profession of the second set. That same day, 2 postulants received novices' habits. As more candidates were enrolled in the Institute, reception and profession of novices became annual events.
2 members continued in 1937. Then the following year, 1938, 4 new members were received. And one of them is still with us today. She is Dada. This Amade Man is one of them, but she has gone to her eternal rest. May she rest in peace.
The ordination of a new bishop of Owerri Diocese, Most Reverend Dr. Joseph Brendan Whelan, in 1948, brought both the novitiate and generalate under the jurisdiction of the new diocese. However, the founder continued his paternal care of the Institute. Under the able, devoted, and loving patronage of these 2 illustrious bishops, the Institute experienced tremendous progress in both spiritual and apostolic life. With the increase in the number of professed members, the local ordinaries of Onitsha and Owerri requested that convents be established in their respective dioceses. The first of such foundations was at Nnewi in the Onitsha Archdiocese. The members of that community comprised 3 professed sisters and a postulant. On the 16th January 1950, the daughter community was blessed by the founder himself. The apostolate of the new foundation included the running of a girls' primary school of about 200 girls, including boarders, house-to-house visitations, teaching catechism, treatment and care of lepers in leper clinic, which was carried out through the help of a Holy Rosary medical doctor. The first Immaculate Heart sister assigned this duty was a model of charity and devotion, so much so that all the sisters that worked in the clinic after her maintained the same standard of virtue without any sign of repugnance. God bless and reward.
We had also the Proseria near Nnewi, where some of our sisters worked. Sisters Mary, Agnes and Patricia of Blessed Memory. They had a special dress made for them for doing their work, and they were associated with the lepers, taking the necessary precaution. The sisters themselves were very, very happy doing that apostolate, and the lepers they were attending took them as their mothers.
The year 1957 was a turning point in the history of their religious institute. Precisely on the 23rd of August 1957, after 20 years of existence, the native sisters, after their first general chapter, assumed full administrative responsibility of their institute, with the election of Mother Mary Benedict Anyogu, the first indigenous superior general, and her council. The new superior general and her constituted general council took up the office in 1st September 1957. Sister Mary Emmanuel Amadi became the formator of novices. When the Holy Rosary Sisters concluded their mission with the Immaculate Heart Sisters at Uruala in 1st November 1958, the novitiate formation was completely in the hands of the native sisters.
1957, we became autonomous. And this sister, that means that sisters had trained us, they had to go. And I told you that the sisters, Mother Eucharia was replaced. Mother Eucharia was replaced by Sister McConlett from here. And then after a short time, Mother Mary DeSales came and replaced Mother Conlett. And Mother DeSales was there. For this autonomy in 1957, they did not go in 1957. No, they did not go in 1957. They stayed with us until 1958 handover. They arranged the handover. And how was it? Handover was arranged. I wouldn't call it chapter. Some people call it chapter. That is when other people took over. They call it chapter. No, I won't call it chapter because chapter has some dresses to wear, arrangement, how to recognize chapter. They arranged how the sisters will manage themselves when they left. Mother Mary Benedict was Mother General. The handover to her, Mother General. Mother Mary Emmanuel followed. Mother Mary Annunciata followed. Mother Mary John, secretary. I think this mother that is 100 and something now, she was there helping secretary. That's how it is. And they did very well. They did very well. Even though I say we did very well, we were not saints because we still need to acquire some virtues to be able to live together.
It was a painful separation as the Holy Rosary Sisters were so devoted and motherly. The Young Institute sought consolation in God and the Blessed Virgin Mary through the Rosary and devotion to the Blessed Sacrament. And as recounted by late Mother Mary Benedict, whose shoulder bore the burden, our Immaculate Mother did not disappoint me. Still a diocesan institute, the Young Native Religious Institute experienced great advancement both in new foundations and apostolate. In 1963, she crossed the Niger and made her first foundation in Lagos, outside Igbo land, which later went with the Civil War, though the institute, by God's grace, found herself in Lagos again in the year 2000. The first missionary foundation of the institute outside Nigeria was in Sierra Leone in 1966. Therefore, the founder, Archbishop Chasiri, visited the community before his death in 1967.
Actually, we started going on mission, but on a very small scale during our founder's time. The first sisters went to Sierra Leone and so forth.
The institute expanded before the war. Requests for new convents continued. 6th of July 1967 was the outbreak of the Civil War on two fronts of Ogoja and Nsukka. Nigerian soldiers shelled Enugu on the 29th September 1967 and gained entrance on the 4th October same year. Reverend Mother Mary Benedict and the entire generalate left Enugu and spent the night at Ogu community and continued to Uruala later on for safety reasons.
On the 6th of July 1967, the war broke in two sectors. The first sector is in Gakim, in Ogoja and Obudu. The second one is in Nsukka, what they call Ukutu. And that was started at 4:30 p.m. on the 6th of July 1967. On the 29th of September 1969, the Nigerian soldiers shelled Enugu, but they actually entered Enugu on the 4th of October 1967. Reverend Mother Benedict and our Superior General then, with the entire members of Immaculate Heart Sisters in Enugu, moved out of Enugu to Ruala for safety. They evacuated all our belongings. Some of them had to sleep in Ogu, our own community then, because there was no bed, no mattress, absolutely nothing. They lay down on the floor in the parlor.
The Nigerian Biafran War plunged the nation into further unprecedented economic, financial, and social crisis. The eastern Nigerians were mostly the victims. As the war advanced into Igbo land, the problem of refugees became crucial.
The sisters worked in the hospital, they worked in the refugee camp, they worked in Kwashoka clinic, they looked after the dying, they prepared those dying, they helped them to die and sent them to the Lord. We did practically everything because there was no school. All the teachers were nurses, pastors, no school at all. Everybody was working with one mind and one soul. Sisters, at this point, we are talking about our charism, compassion, our spirit, humility. We didn't know what it was, but we practiced, we had a practical aspect of our compassion during the war. We walked and walked and walked and walked.
The Immaculate Heart Sisters moved along with the refugees from one place to another. They set up sick beds for the sick, feeding centers for families. Kwashiorkor clinics were established for affected children. Caritas international organizations like the Red Cross, Vatican, World Council of Churches, and so on provided the basic needs of the refugees like drugs, food, clothing, etc. Hence, the sisters settled at Umunze, Inishi, Ehimembano, Ezinifite Nnewi, and a host of other areas in 1968 and 69 respectively, to attend to the needs of overpopulated refugees and victims of the war.
Let's sing to our mother as we would sing to our love. Mother in heaven, Mother with us on earth.
1968, Ogu was threatened. We started to evacuate our patients, our drugs, and everything to Mbano Joint Hospital and Mbano Convent. Ogu Joint Hospital was relocated at Teachers Training College, Umunakano, in IHM Mbano. That's where we set it up. And Sister Mary Concilia, one of our sisters, was in charge there. The grade 1 midwifery school was relocated at the Yishi Health Center
Some sisters were posted to various surgical units at Ogu Joint Hospital, Mbano Joint Hospital, and Umunato Joint Hospital to assist in the theater, while others worked in the maternity homes to care for antenatal mothers and child welfare clinics.
Mother Mary Joseph and the rest, we worked at the surgical unit. Dr. Fomata, Dr. Mbanefo, and their team reset the surgical unit from Ogo to a surgical unit in Mbano. There we started to clear for the wounded soldiers from Enugu zone and all around.
The following morning, things got out of hand. So we started hearing ferrets and the armored car and shooting and everything. Wounded soldiers started streaming, down, coming to us. And we had soldiers in the ward and patients in the ward. At a stage, what we did was what are we going to do? We cannot go to Zako because that was Omonato, and we have to pass Omahia going to that before we reach Omonato. There's no way again to go because we are cut off. The morning, it was too much that so many wounded soldiers started coming in from all sectors. We couldn't keep them there. We said that we have to leave the place. So what mother did, we went to the chapel and all of us, we knelt down, opened the tabernacle and consumed the consecrated host. Couldn't stay. We started going out.
Still, others served as catechists, gave moral instructions, and prepared dying patients for happy deaths.
We continued to work in Ogo. This happened in 1967. Hospital was a surgical unit. Was there. The sisters worked in refugee camps, some of them as captists in all the areas where the refugees were.
All the sisters undertook the massive burial of the victims of Nigerian jet bombers, air raids at Ogo and Mbano joint hospitals, respectively.
One peculiar incident on Oye Ogo Day. People from various areas came there because they had plenty of food. On this particular day, the Nigerian soldiers bombarded the market, strafed it. Hundreds were killed, hundreds were wounded, hundreds were maimed. The thing was a horrible sight that made heaven weep. The very sick patients were transferred to Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Umuahia. Those whom we could cater for, the surgical unit, Dr. Mbanefo, Dr. Obi, and Dr. Mbano, and the rest, they did the surgery there. Hundreds that had nobody to claim them. Who came for the market, their relations were not there. Immaculate sisters, the students and staff, we had to dig a large grave and did what we call massive grave of hundreds of people. There's nothing we could do. It was burial. Eventually, we moved on.
Yet another group of sisters became chaplains to the military camps at the risk of their lives. Some sisters struggled into the war zones to treat wounded soldiers, provided food and dry pack to the weak ones. Others served at the rehabilitation centers and disposed themselves for the wounded and convalescent soldiers.
During the Civil War, Immaculate sisters distinguished themselves in helping to relieve the suffering of our people. We worked in sick bays, Oshoko clinics, health centers, maternity homes, dispensaries, various surgical and medical units. Every Immaculate sister became a nurse as well as a teacher during the war, mainly to witness the healing ministry of Christ to our suffering people. Some Baptists prepared the dying people to meet our God. When an area was disturbed, the sisters moved away to a safe place with their refugees and settled there. Establishment of a refugee camp in Aba. In May 1968, refugee camp and center were established for people from Rivers and Bayelsa states, as well as from Calabar, Ogoja, Port Harcourt states. The massive movement of the people posed an enormous refugee problem, which had to be settled. The situation was appalling, as people were living in desperate and grossly inhuman situation. The establishment of the refugee camp were directly responsible for the saving of thousands of lives of ordinary people, particularly from Rivers, Bayelsa states, Akwa Ibom, and Cross River states. Rivers and Bayelsa states numbered about 800 people. Cross River and Akwa Ibom numbered about 20,000 people. Special tribute for the help, concern, and courage of humanitarian organizations, Caritas International, Vatican City, World Council of Churches, the International Red Cross, the Salvation Army, Catholic organizations from Rome. It was largely through such organizations that the refugee camps were sustained. Special thanks to our missionaries, priests and sisters, Biafran priests, as well as Immaculate Heart sisters who worked around the clock in these refugee and Kwashiorkor centers.
Let's sing to our mother as we would sing to our love. Mother in heaven, mother with us on earth.
Whatever has a beginning must certainly have an end. Thus, the war finally came to an end on January 12, 1970. So what? The aftermath of the war was worse than the actual war. There was no law and order. The soldiers pleased themselves. Raping, looting, stealing, and so on became the order of the day.
After the Civil War, the aftermath of the Civil War was worse than the actual war. There was no law and order. The soldiers behaved as they liked. They raped young women. They raped young girls. They destroyed. They looted. They did as they liked.
The good Lord led the Immaculate Heart Sisters out of the ravages of the Civil War through the difficulties of rehabilitation, reconstruction, and reactivation. Shortly after the war, General Yakubu Gowon repatriated all the missionaries in Igbo land. Consequently, the Irish Holy Rosary Sisters were forced to leave, and the various institutions under their care fell prey to looting and occupation by aliens. The same thing was applicable to the ones manned by the Sisters of St. John of God and the Assumption Sisters. This news disturbed Bishop J.B. Whelan due to the outcome of the departure of the missionaries and lack of manpower in the Eastern Nigerian Church. The only viable indigenous and active women religious in the territory was the Immaculate Heart Sisters. Bishop Whelan beckoned on the Superior General of the Sisters, Mother Mary Joseph Uzigwe, to please salvage the Catholic institutions from the hands of aliens. His Grace Archbishop Arinze, now Cardinal, also called on the sisters to use all their resources to rescue and rehabilitate the Catholic institutions.
Bishop Whelan, when he got the letter of repatriation, he was badly moved. He was very sad. What could happen? Because of the number of expatriate sisters that have been sent home, the Immaculate Heart Sisters were only congregation viable who could take the challenge. And so he sent a word through Monsignor Koranyamu, the administrator. Sent a word to him to get to the Mother General of the Immaculate Heart Sisters, to tell the Immaculate Heart Sisters to take the challenge. Archbishop, the Immaculate Heart Sisters, They also took the challenge. Archbishop Francis Arinze also made the Mother General of the Immaculate Heart Sisters to take the challenge.
It was a very difficult time, very difficult. We thank God that even in that period, the Immaculate Heart Sisters continued to make a significant contribution. Indeed, I don't forget that it was that time you had a general chapter. I think it was in Ekweraz in 1969, when the war was still raging. At the end of that civil war, things were very hard for the church, also for the whole society. In Igbo land especially, because the federal government in Nigeria sent away all our missionaries, bishop, priests, sisters, all. So, Bishop Whelan was one of them. They rounded them up. I went to Lagos with Monsignor Matthew Obioku, who were received by General Gowon within 2 weeks of the end of the war, to beg him not to send away the missionaries. You have read in the book I wrote, Battles of the Faith. We saw that the government had decided that they must go. We continued with the local priests. The priests were only 33, where before that war we had 80. So we had about 50 Irish priests sent away. The Nigerian priests remaining were 33. So some of them were running 4 parishes, big ones. There were 2 priests, Father Ifenatora and Father Emmanuel Wosu. Before I ordained them, I already appointed them parish priests. 2 weeks after ordination, they went into the parish immediately as parish priests. That's emergency. Sisters too, because the sisters were also sent away, and most of them were Holy Rosary sisters from Onitsha Archdiocese, and also sisters of St. John of God, who were at Oka. They had a secondary school, and they were running Adasi Hospital. So when the government was sending away the sisters, and I begged the government and they did not consent, the government insisted they would send them away, I had to move quickly in order to see that these institutions work. Because the government that time, under Obabi Asika, was very anxious to take over church things, take over our colleges, take over our primary school, take over our hospitals. So I moved quickly. Providentially, the Superior General of Immaculate Heart Sisters, Mother Mary Joseph Ozuigwe, was very active and capable, so she got going immediate. She already was organizing the novices and postulants during the Civil War, because we had to move them from place to place. So I discussed with her, we must move quickly. And even if the sister was not a qualified SRN, SEM, we put her in charge of Borromeo Hospital. That was Sister Chrysostom. She was only a midwife. She was not even SRN. And she did it very well. And there were others. So we had to get sisters quickly to go into these institutions so that the church could continue running them, because they belong to the Catholic Church. There was no other congregation of sisters in the church diocese. There were a few Holy Rosary sisters, but they were teachers, and none of them could even be a principal of a secondary school. So I had to look for Immaculate Heart Sisters, and they did it very well, filling all the places immediately. The organization was no small matter, but there was also the general social work and the general presence of the church. Because the church is not only priests. There are sisters too, there are brothers. The Brothers of St. Stephen began at that time.
The period after the war was a very difficult period for many communities and organizations. Even in the church, the Holy Rosary sisters and the Irish priests were sent away during the war. Of the school and medical institutions of the mission were in their hands before and during the war, before the federal government decided to send them away for what they thought was the role of the missionaries in the Biafra war in favor of the Biafrans. So just as the diocesan priests had to face the reality that the Irish Reverend fathers were sent away and assumed responsibility of what the church has to do. So also the Immaculate Heart Sisters had to take over, as it were, at least in Onitsha Archdiocese, the responsibilities that had here to be carried on by the Irish Reverend Sisters, particularly Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital, which seemed to have been abandoned, like an abandoned child was looking for a mother. It was at that time that the Archbishop of Onitsha, now asked the Immaculate Heart Sisters to step in and help. That was a very difficult period, but thanks to God and because of their calling, the sisters did very well in the salvage work. Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital was a reference hospital in these parts before the war. In Onitsha Archdiocese was the most important hospital. It is that after the war, the diocese started to build up medical institutions in Onitsha. That drew away the attention that should have been given to Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital. This Boromeo and the rest of them in Onitsha together. That's where they had the attention. The Immaculate Heart Sisters kept Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital alive.
And so, reconstruction work began.
Quickly, Mother Zigwe and Council dispatched sisters in twos to the various convents and institutions left vulnerable by the departure of the missionaries.
We reconstructed all the convents, all the institutions. I'm not taking Archdiocese of Onitsha. All the institutions and all the convents in Archdiocese of Onitsha. We reconstructed all the institutions in the diocese, all the convents in Amiibo, and so forth. The schools of nursing and schools of midwifery and lab had their inspection and passed.
Thus, the Immaculate Heart Sisters rescued Catholic hospitals from soldiers and alien groups. Joint Hospital Ogu was rescued from American Quakers.
What happened? Our sisters, the Immaculate Heart Sisters, we were living at Ogu Joint Hospital long ago before the outbreak of the Nigerian Biafran Civil War. It was that very year, 1968, that they entered Ogu town. So before their entrance, the sisters were able to evacuate the hospital, both the patients, the staff, and everything belonging to the institution, to a training school, teachers training college in Ihime, Mbano, in Umahia Diocese in those days, now in Okigwe Diocese. So the general department of the hospital was settled there. Then the School of Midwifery and the Maternity Department was sent to Inishi Health Center under the leadership of Dr. Ekoma, the medical health officer then from Itigidi. They were taking care of the patients, both the general patients and those wounded during the war. Then in December 1969, the hospital was evacuated a second time to Itenansi. So eventually the war ended up suddenly by January 12, 1970. General Yakubu Gowon, the head of state of Nigeria, made a general announcement that all Nigerians should go back to their former residences before the war. The first team of Immaculate Heart Sisters who heeded this instruction left Itenansi under the leadership of their able, dynamic, and patriotic Mother General, Mother Mary Joseph Uzigwe. The natives came out in tears, saying goodbye to us when we are moving. We were determined because we believe and know whom we were entrusted. We are not afraid to move. So on the way, we met a lot of hardships with the soldiers blocking the way and asking you many questions and delaying one thing or the other. Eventually, by the grace of God, we arrived safely at Obu Joint Hospital. On arrival, to our greatest surprise, Late in the evening, a Quaker church team from United States of America, we already occupying the compound. So we find a place to squat for the night. Then the following day, we made off to Enugu to meet the governor of then Eastern Nigeria in the person of Lieutenant Colonel John Atompera. We presented our problem to him. He insisted that we should go back to Ogo Joint Hospital. So we came back to Ogo Joint Hospital. He settled the issue amicably by transferring the Quaker Church team to General Hospital, Abreba, where they settled themselves. Then we settled down, first with the ordeal of clearing the premises, and then burying the corpses littered all over the premises. After some time, then we settled in our usual way, taking care of the patients, caring for them, for the glory of God, for the salvation of souls, and for the sanctification of our own souls.
Joint Hospital Umunatu from the Army. Bishop Shanahan Hospital from the Army.
I was drafted to Nsukka with Sister Mary Aloysia Hill, Sister Mary Benedict in Hawaii. On arrival, the whole compound was occupied by the military soldiers. So this time, we have to meet the commander in charge of the soldiers. Late Monsignor Peter Maisley was of much help to us. We are squatting at the lapidated convent at Oboba. He sends his driver and car to pick us every morning to attend Mass at St. Teresa's Catholic Church. We have our breakfast, and from there, the driver will take us to the commander in charge of the Nsukka sector. This took months before we succeeded in getting the letter from the commander ordering the soldiers to move out. They were occupying the whole compound. Usually, the buildings were in a mess, even the convents. So it took us time to clear the mess and settled once more at work at Nsukka.
Joint Hospital Azobo. Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital, Ihiala, was handed over to the Immaculate Heart Sisters Mary Jema Onyeji and Mary Teresita Ike by the Holy Rosary Sisters.
Archbishop Arinze asked us to come to Our Lady of Lourdes, Ihiala. So Sister Mary Jema again and myself came to Ihiala in 1970 April. When we came in, there were patients all over the place. The corridors everywhere, things scattered. The place was so bushy. We started cutting down the trees. We started treating the patients. We had to go to Enugu to look for sheets to put the patients in. It was the only hospital operating the whole of Eastern region up to Delta. Patients were streaming in from Delta region, from the east, from all over. This was the only hospital catering for them. So we go everywhere looking for drugs. Eventually, some Holy Rosary sisters came down, but they were not nurses and they could not cope up. They left and went to Onitsha. Then we continued to stay here. The School of Midwifery was accredited before, but then there was no School of Nursing. We started the School of Nursing. They came here in 1974. I did the partial screening. I was running around again for cement, for everything, for materials. Went to Kalago, brought cement, and Mrs. Okechukwu and the team from Lagos came and they got the place ready. So we now had the School of Nursing here.
Giant Hospital Mbano was completely looted. St. Mary's Giant Hospital, Amibo, was vandalized. Holy Rosary Hospital and Charles Borromeo Hospital, Onitsha, were destroyed. Mother of Christ Hospital, Ogui, Enugu, was mercilessly looted. St. Joseph's Hospital, Adas, was also totally looted. Others were Children's Hospital, Okporo, now St. Damian's Hospital, Okporo, and a host of maternities were rescued from the lion's den. All the schools of nursing and midwifery of the above hospitals were also reactivated and reopened after meeting the standard of requirement by the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria. The Immaculate Heart Sisters also recognized the financial assistance received locally and internationally. Obviously, the life and undoubted courage of the Immaculate Heart Sisters in the periods of war and rehabilitation highly impressed the local population and international organizations, as well as the ecclesiastical authority.
Well, the Immaculate Heart Sisters, I have always said it is somehow interesting that they started in my town, Ihala, in 1937. When I was still a small boy, I met a group of them. Of course, that time, they were those who were learning under the tutelage, if you want to call it so, of the Holy Rosary Sisters, who were also that time in Ihala. I was also made the chairman of the management board of Our Lady of Lourdes Hospital, Ihala. That was the first stronger contact. That time, the Irish missionaries that were handling the hospital had been chased out, so to say, by the Nigerian government. So the Immaculate Heart Sisters took over the running of this hospital. We were working together to see what we can do to build up that hospital, to make it be what it's supposed to be, and indeed to surpass what it was before. I did that for several years before I then left for Ibadan to teach in the seminary. When I now came back to Onitsha Archdiocese, I was made the secretary to the Archbishop. We have to deal then officially in various aspects because they were the major congregation, almost exclusively, running such establishments like hospitals and etc. for us and with us. Now, I was also then made the chairman of the Holy Rosary Hospital maternity, which eventually was developed into a special hospital in Onitsha, working with the sisters again and in full swing. When we opened the bookshop at the Holy Trinity, it was the Immaculate Heart Sisters who took over the running of the bookshop. I was the chairman, and things went very, very smoothly. Recently, one of your sisters died, a very excellent, simple, humble sister, Ave. That time, when I was in the Holy Trinity, she was the one running the machines for the altar bread, and I was sort of the supervising it. We worked very smoothly and very closely all along. She was a simple sister, very religious, understood what she came to be, uncomplicated, straightforward. You know where she stands. There is no two words about her. But beyond that, in the hospitals, even though I was the chairman of the management board of our hospital, Holy Rosary, I was also sort of assisting in the administration of Our Lady of Lourdes still, and of Borromeo Hospital, especially when it comes to management and employment of doctors, etc. We were working hand in hand. It was an excellent period for me. Now, when I became the director of catechetics in Onitsha Archdiocese, again, it was the Immaculate Heart Sisters that assisted me very, very strongly, particularly in the training of catechists. When eventually I became the director of our Pontifical Mission Societies, it was again the Immaculate Heart Sisters that gave me the maximum assistance. I remember, first of all, when I was appointed, even at the diocesan level, I did not know very much about that. But one Immaculate Heart Sister who was grounded, particularly in Holy Childhood, took up the thing with me, and without any formalities, things went on to the extent that when I finished with Onitsha Archdiocese, she was appointed the director to succeed me, that is Sister Bennett. But then, as I was going to Abuja, the sisters were very generous and gave me to assist me in our work on that. Another sister, very, very brilliant, very active, hardworking, and we all worked together in Abuja for the whole period I was the national director, and then came back again to Nnewi Diocese. You can see a congregation that is out to do its job. Let me take just one example. The time I was in charge of religious education in Onitsha Archdiocese, there was one of the sisters also who was there working with me in the same office on religious education. Now, she knew her job. She prepared a wonderful, really wonderful little book on Christian information on liturgy that spread throughout the country, so that when I became director of a Pontifical Mission Societies, it is this book that it was used by the children all over the country for the study of liturgical terms and meanings. This is a clear sign of dedication to duty. I see the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart as those who are really dedicated to their duties, those who understand what the religious life means, those who know that they have not come to the religious life seeking a job or seeking promotion or seeking other thing that is not Christ. It is this focus particularly that gives them, as far as I am concerned, a special significant role in the entire living of the religious life, because the witness value of the religious life is not restricted to activities, what you do, what you achieve, or what you do not achieve, but the life that one sees is imbued by the Spirit of Christ. This is a major thing that I see in them. And when they go out for mission, you see that type of thing. Everywhere you meet them at the mission, they are loved. People know, yes, this is a person who wants to be a reverend sister. This is not to say that there are not problems. There are problems everywhere. But those problems, you see them immediately, and you know that these are human problems. But generally speaking, I think that the congregation has risen to thank God, that Nigeria has risen to thank God. Indeed, the church has risen to thank God for the founder of the congregation of the Immaculate Heart Sisters for this wonderful gift to the church.
What can the Immaculate Heart Sisters do without the grace of God? The secret and source of their strength and wisdom is their communion with the Lord of work. Before and after Abuse Day, the Immaculate Heart Sisters try to penetrate the mystery of grace and of God's goodness in their quiet moment in prayer. This prayer in secret, in the peaceful depths of the soul, delights the heart of Jesus. On entering the convent, an Immaculate Heart Sister does not repudiate the fundamental tendency of her nature. She remains her mother. Sharing the feelings of the church, her heart too goes out to the sufferings and strayed. In her daily prayers, therefore, she includes all the joys, the sorrows, and all the needs she comes up with, or those the church recommends to her. Her sympathy goes above all to the most unfortunate, the sick, the afflicted, the lonely, the neglected and forgotten ones. All of them are her children, and she bears their distress in her heart. The Immaculate Heart Sisters spend only a part of their day in the chapel. Their professional duties call them elsewhere. They cannot unceasingly meditate or recite set prayers, but they can keep contact with God through ejaculatory prayers as they walk. Through a silent recognition of His presence, they do their work in faithful fulfillment of their union with the Lord of work. The ordeal of war over, the Immaculate Heart Religious Institute struggled on to live out the legacy of their beloved father-founder, Archbishop Charles Hiri. And so it was that the Sisters of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, Mother of Christ, Nigeria, obtained their papal status in December 1973. It was the Lord's doing, and their joy knew no bounds. This was a boost to the life and work of this institute that has made consistent efforts to reach out to God's people in as many dioceses as have invited her for apostolic services, both at home and overseas.
I had a vision of the congregation, a happy family in God, settled and working in the church with happy members. Then I went to my first canonical visit to communities. What I discovered was far from what I just said about the vision of my congregation. There was much tension, disagreements, and non-peace. I began to look for why. It wasn't the type of community life I experienced. In the course of my search, I found out that there are things we should have done for ourselves we didn't do. My search continued. Then at one point in the search, I attended a conference for major superiors. During that conference, different spiritualities were discussed. In the program they made for me just before we left that conference, the first stage was going back to our root, and we started going back to our root. And in telling our stories and hearing our history, we discovered that the community life has been going on properly until after the war. We discovered that after the war, we reconstructed buildings, we reconstructed facilities for running the institutions under our care, but we failed to reconstruct our spiritual life, which was badly battered by the war. And so that's where we found out that something has to be done. In the discussion, I found ourselves in apostolic spirituality, and it was the first stage of a program to get into apostolic spirituality. I found out where our problem began, and this will be the spirituality that will help us to achieve a harmonious, happy community life, God's children walking happily in God's church. So I wasn't actually seeking for identity. I was looking for what would bring us this harmonious, happy community life. I think I discovered it in apostolic spirituality.
The structural divisions and missionary outreach of the Institute span around 8 regions in 11 nations. There are also to be missionaries. This was part of the content of the letter of their founder, Charles Hiri, to the Holy Rosary Formators on the 5th October 1937.
When people in foreign countries, other African countries, need us badly, we go in to lend them a helping hand. And so, going on missions began, particularly during the time of Mother Joseph Uzigwe. She sent sisters to Kenya and to Ghana and started the first mission in Italy, Castel Borgono. Continued in the same vein because requests kept coming in and we had to be generous with the church. We send missionaries wherever we are needed, try to share what we have with the church everywhere.
By the special grace of God, the superiors of the Institute heeded this clear injunction of their founder, Archbishop Charles Hiri of blessed memory. Today, the Institute of the Sisters of the Most Pure Heart of Mary planted with two native women, Maria Anyogu and Clara Orano, is now serving God's people in many dioceses in Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, Chad, Sierra Leone, Ireland, Italy, Canada, Germany, England, and the United States of America. Like other religious institutes, the Immaculate Heart Sisters have three crucial stages of formation before first profession. They are the aspirancy, postulancy, and novitiate stages. The institute has one juniorate in Kenya and one in Nigeria, 3 postulates in Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana respectively, 3 novitiates situated in Nigeria again, Ghana, and Kenya. The institute operates a 1-year scholasticate program for the temporarily professed sisters. Their main formation program starts temporarily with the pre-novitiate stage in accordance with the mind of the Church and proceeds to the novitiate. The period of postulancy lasts for 2.5 years, where candidates are guided by their formators in prayer, reflection on their vocation, deepening of their faith, and the knowledge of God and the Church through the scriptures and other relevant studies. They also go through apostolic and community experience outside the postulate for 6 months. The period of novitiate lasts for 2 years, within which the candidates intensely follow the institutes and churches program for this period. Through the spiritual direction and evaluation with the formandi, the formator observes the growth and extent of candidates' personal internalization of the formation received and their personal relation with God. A 2-month stationship is organized for all the temporarily professed sisters prior to their final profession. Ongoing formation seminars and workshops are regularly organized for finally professed sisters in their sets for spiritual, psychological, and professional updating. With this training, an Immaculate Heart Sister is prepared and ready to be sent and to be with Him wherever she finds herself to fulfill the mind of their founder and share His compassion and love with the sick in hospitals, maternities, and clinics. His compassion and love in the education of children and adolescents in all levels of education.
We have to educate our sisters to reach the standard of teaching in the seminaries. So we educated our sisters according to the needs of the church, and that is why we went into various fields to satisfy the need of the church, both among the laity and in preparation for our clergy.
And equally shares his compassion and love with women and girls preparing for marriages and other sacraments for a happy family. Compassion and love with orphans, widows.
You know, the problem of the widows in our society, and our congregation has really delved into it seriously. We have meetings with the young widows in different parishes here in Olo and at Adane. And I will move from place to place. We visit in Suka Diocese, Olo Diocese, Ahia Diocese, and the Owerri Archdiocese. So we organize seminars for the widows. We obtain soft loans for them for petit trading and farming. We teach them different skills like pomade making, soap making, teach them how to fry chin-chin, buns, popcorn, and the rest of it, so that they stop begging. Because very often when they go into begging, you know what our society is like. They get into trouble. And these years of HIV and AIDS, you know what it means for the women. So we are trying to shelve them from that problem. The very old ones, we fetch firewood for them, water, cook for them, wash their clothes, sweep their houses, and they take them to hospital. Sometimes when you take them to hospital, there's no money to pay their hospital bills. You have to go around begging in order to be able to pay that hospital bill. And sometimes when I was at Adane, we buried many of them in our own very compound because nobody could come to claim them. When they died, we buried them in our compound. So the firewood here is for one of the old widows whom we are looking after. What prompted me into this apostolate is the charisma of our congregation, which is compassion. You see, our founder founded us for the upliftment of women. When he came to Nigeria, the place of women was very deplorable. So, out of compassion, he founded our congregation to help uplift the status of our women. Then our sisters have been doing this in schools and hospitals. But recently, the plight of widows caught our attention, and the congregation wanted some sisters to go into it, so I opted for it. And not only that, the spirit of St. Vincent de Paul and Mother Teresa of Calcutta too helped me to find the apostolate very interesting.
Deep and undiluted compassion for lepers in clinics and colonies, in home visitation without segregation. Here is humility and compassion in any other works of charity in keeping with their foundation. That master seed, sown 75 years ago in Ihiala by Archbishop Chaswiri, CSSP, has grown into a giant tree with branches bearing fruits of 902 professed sisters, 53 novices, 84 postulants, and 590 aspirants. Their sisters in Requiem are not left out. They fought the good fight and have finished the race. May the Almighty and merciful God receive them into His home of peace and happiness. Amen.
Let's sing to our mother as we would sing to our love. Mother in heaven, mother with us on earth.
We have certain plans on how to proceed with rediscovering our charism of compassion and humility spirit. So we want to carry the sisters along by, in a permanent attitude of service, to attend to our members with actions of the government, promoting dialogue and reconciliation, fostering always the spirit of community and collaboration. In addition to this, we also intend to indulge more on making our Father Founder known and loved and imitated. In order to achieve that, we have already mapped out activities that will help us to learn our Father Founder. Precisely, our Diamond Jubilee preparations, we have added a written essay on the person of our Father Founder. Already we have collected his words, writings and instructions and put them in a kind of diary that every day our Father Founder have one or two things to say to us so that it will carry us along throughout the day. That diary had been distributed to all our communities and the sisters appreciate it so much. And also, in order to achieve that spirit of community and oneness, united, we have also tried to gather all the names of our sisters put together, their fixed days and date anniversaries of our sisters, so that we are in communion with both the dead and the living. On a day that a sister celebrates feast, now each person will now know it in the community and pray for the person. We have been doing this, but this time around, those whose names are not in the materium of the Catholic Church will also have them in our diary, remembered and called on the phone or send text messages, so that we are in communion with one another in prayer and in celebration. In the area of education, we intend to continue to empower our sisters in various aspects of the church's life, so that they will be relevant in the mission of the church. Formation of our sisters, especially formation of our sisters to take care of our formation houses. That one is so important. And the sisters to take care of our schools, where we are training the young ones in the spirit of our charism, in the spirit of our founder, asking us to be compassionate, so that right now in our education apostolate, we have, by September, we intend to activate religious education as a discipline. As a discipline in the sense that it is not just a subject that people will attend and they are dropped. No. This time around, it will have its own credit load and the thought as every other discipline taught in the school. And at the end, the students also go in for exams on this, and they get their certification on that. These are all the areas of improving in our founders' intention that we take care of the youth, their catechetical formation and the moral upliftment. And in the area of our taking care of young girls and women, we intend to have a kind of a youth and catechetical center, whereby we shall now, in the spirit of the immediate concluded chapter, reactivate our training of women for marriage and for family life. We will improve on that, so that there will be now sisters who are trained on that area to take care of these people and prepare them for married life. So even in the training of the young people, we have now tried to have some of our sisters to improve more on youth apostolate, so that they can take care of these people. With these little things put together, we see how far we can really contribute in making our sisters, all of us, more aware of the responsibilities we all need to carry out together in response to, first of all, the charism which our Father Founder bequeathed to us, compassion and humility. And how do we live this? We live this in whatever we are doing, wherever we are working. That in our schools, what will make the difference is that students who have read or passed through us will have this spirit of compassion and humility. So our intention is to make this particular virtue that our founder had bequeathed to us, this aspect of Christ's life which we are meant to live, that we also imbibe them and give them to people who come in contact to us. The same thing we are doing with our associate members, that even in their own family life and area of work, that they live the compassion and humility of Jesus. This is what the few things we have in plan right now to carry out and see how far it works well. None of them will really materialize, except that we actively and completely rely on God's grace and the inspiration of the Holy Spirit to begin to be the chief teacher. We are only the chief servants, the servant carrying out God's own will. And our intention is that every day we discern, listen to God through prayer. What is it you want us to do for this congregation at this point in time? And to ask Him to give us the courage, the firmness, the compassion, the humility
to carry out this without any inhibition.
As they celebrate and rejoice today, they equally pray that the Immaculate Heart of Mary will be their constant strength. Amen.